A few years ago, cities like Adelaide, Perth, and Brisbane had a clear reputation. They were the places Australians moved to when Sydney or Melbourne became too expensive. Today, the numbers tell a different story. In Adelaide, rents increased about 30 to 35% since 2022. In Brisbane, rents are roughly 40% higher than in 2021. In Perth, the rental vacancy rate fell close to 0.5% during 2025. That means about one available rental property for every 200 homes. These cities once acted as Australia's affordability release valves. When housing costs surged in the largest capitals, people moved here. The expectation was simple: move to a smaller city, pay less rent, build a stable life. Today, that assumption is under pressure. If rents are rising quickly in cities that used to be affordable, the question becomes different. Where can an ordinary Australian still build a stable financial life? And what does everyday life actually cost in these cities now? Today, we examine 4 cities once considered Australia's affordable path: Adelaide, Perth, Brisbane, and Hobart. Then we compare them with Canberra, not to judge them, but to examine the numbers. For years, Australians searching for lower living costs followed a familiar strategy. If Sydney became unaffordable, households looked towards smaller capitals. Adelaide offered slower housing growth. Perth offered strong wages connected to mining and infrastructure. Brisbane attracted interstate migration with lower housing costs. Even Hobart began gaining attention as a smaller alternative. Between 2020 and 2023, internal migration across Australia increased significantly. Many households relocated to find affordability. Housing supply did not grow at the same speed. The result now appears clearly in rental data. Prices rose quickly, vacancy rates fell, and the definition of affordability began to change. Housing remains the largest expense for almost every Australian household, and in these cities, rent has increased rapidly. Start with Adelaide. A one-bedroom apartment rents for about $450 per week. That equals roughly $1,950 per month. Two-bedroom apartments average about $580 per week. That equals roughly $2,500 per month. Adelaide rents increased about 30 to 35% since 2022. This places Adelaide among the fastest growing rental markets in Australia. Now, consider Perth. A one-bedroom apartment rents for about $520 per week. Two-bedroom units average about $650 per week. The most important number in Perth is the vacancy rate. At times in 2025, vacancy fell close to 0.5%. In practical terms, that means extremely limited rental supply. Competition between renters becomes intense. Now look at Brisbane. One-bedroom apartments average about $580 per week. Two-bedroom apartments average about $720 per week. Since 2021, rents in Brisbane increased about 40%. Interstate migration drove much of this growth. Many households relocated from southern states. Finally, consider Hobart. A one-bedroom apartment rents for about $470 per week. Two-bedroom apartments average about $600 per week. Between 2019 and 2024, Hobart rents increased roughly 50%. For a smaller city, that growth is significant. Housing dominates household budgets. Groceries are the cost people notice every week. Across many Australian cities, a single adult spends about between $110 and $140 weekly on groceries. For two adults, grocery spending often reaches between $200 and $250 weekly. Some cities experience slightly higher food costs. Hobart often sees this effect. Food transportation logistics increase retail prices. Food inflation also changed several staple prices. A block of cheese previously cost about $8. Today, it can approach $12. Egg prices often fluctuate between $5 and $7 per carton. These increases appear small individually. Across a monthly household budget, they accumulate. Transport costs vary widely. They depend on whether you use public transport or a car. In Adelaide, a monthly public transport pass costs about $110. In Perth, a typical pass costs about $120. In Brisbane, the cost approaches $140 per month. However, many Australians rely on private cars, fuel, insurance, registration. These costs can reach between $200 and $280 per month. Housing prices often push renters farther from the central business district. Longer distances increase commute times. That adds an indirect financial cost. Utilities represent another predictable expense. Electricity and gas can reach between $400 and $500 per quarter. That equals roughly between $130 and $170 monthly. Internet plans typically cost between $70 and $90 per month. Mobile phone plans often add between $30 and $60. Hidden costs appear elsewhere: parking fees, insurance, unexpected rent increases at lease renewal. Each cost appears small. Together, they reshape household budgets. To understand affordability, income must be compared with expenses. Consider a typical professional salary in Adelaide. An annual salary of $75,000 produces about $4,800 monthly after tax. Now apply typical living costs. Rent at $450 per week equals about $1,950 per month, and groceries may reach roughly $500 monthly. Transport may cost about $150 monthly using public transport. Utilities, internet, and phone may total about $250 monthly. After these essential expenses, remaining income becomes limited. Now consider Brisbane. A salary around $82,000 annually produces about $5,100 monthly after tax. Rent near $580 per week equals roughly $2,500 monthly. Housing alone can approach half of take-home income. This pattern is becoming common across several Australian cities. Wages rise slowly, housing costs rise faster. Over time, the gap changes household budgets. Despite these trends, these cities still work for certain households. If your income exceeds the local median, pressure decreases. Dual income households share housing costs. Certain professions also provide stronger salaries. Healthcare, engineering, technology. These sectors often provide greater income stability. For single renters earning average wages, the margin becomes smaller. Saving for a housing deposit takes longer. Unexpected expenses become harder to manage. Lifestyle flexibility slowly decreases. This does not mean these cities are unlivable. However, affordability increasingly requires stronger income or shared housing. Australia still offers a high quality of life, maintaining that life is becoming more expensive. The list of genuinely affordable cities may be shrinking. In the next video, we examine the places Australians are moving to now. Some locations may surprise you. Subscribe if you want the full financial picture of living in Australia, not just the highlights.